say every kingdom must come to an end. They also say every hero must face their destiny. But what happens when those two destinies collide? Find out in today's episode of The Lost Guardian. Our story begins in the Kingdom of Ethel, one of the oldest kingdoms in all of Area. It was founded by the legendary king, Alaric, who forged it into a bastion of magic and science that inspired awe in its neighbors and dismay in its enemies. For centuries, the royal family of Ethel prospered by mastering both the arcane arts and engineering. They constructed magnificent towers powered by elemental crystals. They developed devices capable of traversing the very skies, and they wove powerful wards that protected the land from harm. At their peak, people of Ethel were arguably the most advanced in all of Area, but as time passed, the rest of Aerith caught up. Other nations developed their own impressive technologies and formidable magics, and soon the great kingdom of Ethel found itself no longer at the forefront of progress, but rather in the middle of a war, one that would decide not only the fate of their nation, but potentially the entire continent. At the heart of this conflict is a group of warriors known as the Eternal Hordes. They are a mysterious cabal of immortal beings led by an enigmatic sorcerer named Balthazar, whose origins and motivations are unknown. What is known, however, is that they seek the destruction of all sentient life in Ethel. That includes the king and his family, specifically the king's young son, Prince. You see, centuries ago, an ancient prophecy foretold the coming of a child of starlight who would bring ruin upon the eternal hordes. And so these immortal beings have spent years searching for this prophesied child, eliminating all potential heirs until they can be sure that the prophecy is not true. When the horde descended upon the city of Solon, killing thousands and nearly ending the royal bloodline, King Arion made a desperate bargain with the elemental lords, the spirits of nature that watched over his realm. In exchange for granting him and his family immortality, he promised them his son's life. This ensured the survival of House Valerian and gave them a fighting chance against the eternal hordes. However, the deal came with a catch. As part of the bargain, the king and his family lost their memories, becoming amnesiac shells of their former selves. Only the prince remained unaffected, burdened with the task of avenging his people and restoring his family's memory. We find 17-year-old Cal in training with General Bashir, the commander of Ethel's armed forces. Despite his age, Kalon has proven himself to be an exceptional swordsman, even able to hold his own against an experienced warrior like General Bashir. Yet there's a look of melancholy in his eyes, as he trains a somberness that seems at odds with his otherwise cheerful demeanor. "You fight well, my prince," says General Bashir after their sparring session. "But do you know why you fight?" Kellen shook his head, confused. "To avenge our people. To win back our kingdom," he said. "Those are just excuses to prolong the inevitable. Your duty is to forge a new kingdom, one where the mistakes of the past are not repeated." Kellen looked up sharply, surprised by the general's candor. "But how can we do that when we do want to even remember who we are or why we're refighting?" General Bashir shook his head. "That is your burden to bear, my prince. But it's also where your strength lies. The answers you seek may be lost to time, but they will reveal themselves in due course. You must trust the journey. Callion considered this, then nodded slowly. Thank you, General. I needed that. As the two approach the castle, they see a group of people gathered outside. When they get closer, they hear the townspeople talking about a recent attack on a supply train, carrying much-needed resources to the front line. General Bashir's face hardened as he heard the news. This is getting desperate, he said. If we can't resupply our troops, we won't stand a chance against the hordes. Kalen nodded grimly. He knew he had to do something, but... His mind raced, trying to come up with a solution, but nothing seemed to work. Tan suddenly remembered something. He had been 12 when the Eternal Hordes attacked Solon, but he recalled seeing something peculiar. While most of the Horde seemed to be composed of humanoids, there was one creature in particular that stood out. It was tall and gaunt, with skin like polished bone and eyes that burned with an eerie green light. Though he couldn't remember anything else about it, something about the creature had stuck with him all these years. Could this be the answer? Kalen decided to follow this lead, hoping it would lead him to a solution. He visited the royal archives, hoping to find some record of the creature. But after days of searching, he came up empty-handed. Just as he was about to give up hope, he remembered a story his father used to tell him about a hidden library deep within the palace grounds. It was said to contain knowledge from across the ages, but its location was a closely guarded secret. After all, if the Eternal Hordes were ever to discover it, they would no doubt destroy it. Kalen decided to search for this fabled library, hoping it could help him solve his problems. After searching high and low, Kalen finally found the entrance to the secret library hidden behind a bookshelf in the royal archives. Inside, he found countless scrolls and books detailing everything from arcane lore to engineering. Kalen pored over these texts, searching for any mention of the creature he had seen. Finally, he found a book that matched the creature's description. It was called The Bestiary of the Eternal Hordes, and it detailed the various creatures that made up their ranks. Kalen learned that the creature he had seen was called a bone strider, a skeletal monstrosity with a voracious appetite for flesh. The book also mentioned that the bone striders were incredibly rare, with only a handful ever recorded. But it also said that they possessed a unique ability that could turn the tide of battle. Their bones were hollow, allowing them to amplify magical energies that passed through them. This meant that if the Horde could somehow harness their power, it would make them even more dangerous than they already were. Kalen realized that this was the reason why they were losing the war. The Horde had managed to capture several bone striders and were using them to amplify their own magic, making it much more powerful. Kalen knew he had to act fast. If he could find a way to stop the bone striders, he might just have a chance of winning the war. As Kalen pondered his next move, he heard a familiar voice behind him. Looking for this, he turned to see General Bashir holding out a scroll. It was one of the ones he had taken from the Horde's camp. Kalen took the scroll and unfurled it. It was a map leading to a hidden passage under the city. The Horde must be planning something, Kalen said, realizing that this was his chance to strike a blow against them. I think it's time we paid them a little visit. General Bashir nodded grimly. Very well, my prince. Let us go give our guests a warm welcome. Together, they led a small group of soldiers through the passage and emerged just outside the Horde's camp. They had made it. Kalan took a deep breath, preparing himself for what lay ahead. Then, with a determined nod, he charged forward, ready to face whatever challenges awaited him. And so ends another thrilling chapter in the saga of the Lost Guardian. Will Kalen be able to stop the Eternal Hordes and restore his kingdom? Or will the prophecy foretell his demise? Find out next time on The Last Guardian. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. See you next time.